He was coming home. After 6 days of absence, my husband, the architect of our lives, was returning. He'd called, his voice thick with the weariness of deadlines and deals, promising a late arrival. I knew what he needed. I always did. A warm bath, soft music, the quiet comfort of a familiar touch. The water was deep, silken, infused with the scent of lavender. A glass of rich red wine sat on the edge of the tub, catching the soft glow of the bathroom lights. The music, a slow, sensual melody, filled the air, wrapping around me like a warm embrace. My eyes were closed, lost in the anticipation of his return, the familiar rhythm of our lives. Then, the soft tread of footsteps. Not his heavy, weary stride, but something lighter, hesitant. A question mark in the quiet intimacy of my bath. "Welcome," I murmured, my voice thick with steam, my eyes still closed. "Come join me." Silence. Then, a voice. A voice that sent a shiver down my spine. A voice that was both familiar and utterly foreign. "Mom? It's me, Caleb. Can I come in?" My eyes fluttered open. Through the clouded glass, I saw him. Caleb. My husband's assistant. Young, lean, with eyes that held a strange, unsettling intensity. A silent question hung in the air. A forbidden invitation. "Sure," I breathed, the word barely audible, a whisper carried on the steam. He shed his shirt, the movement fluid, almost predatory. He slid into the water, the warmth enveloping him, his gaze never leaving mine. And in that moment, something shifted. Something inside me, something I didn't know existed, snapped. A dam broke, releasing a torrent of desires I'd long suppressed. I lost myself. I lost all sense of who I was, of what I was. There was only the heat, the touch, the raw, forbidden pleasure. His hands, his mouth. It was a revelation. A dark, intoxicating secret unfolding in the steam-filled air. What brought you here?" I managed, my voice trembling. A question that was more of a desperate plea. "Work," he said. His eyes burning into mine, a lie that tasted like truth. The positions changed, the power shifting, the intimacy deepening. His hands on my skin, his touch, it was like nothing I'd felt before. I was drowning, not in water, but in a sensation so intense, so forbidden, it shattered everything I thought I knew. Then, the cold, hard reality crashed down. The shame, the guilt, the sheer horrifying knowledge of what I'd done. He stood, his eyes filled with a mixture of remorse and something else. Something I couldn't quite decipher. "Mom, I've admired you for so long," he whispered. "Every time I see you." He told me about the emergency, a fabricated crisis at one of my husband's building sites. A way out. A lie. "What have you done, Caleb?" I whispered, but my body betrayed me. Even as the words left my lips, I was reliving the sensation of his touch, the way his tongue. I told him to leave, to use the back door. He didn't know the way. As I guided him, the air crackled between us. A brush of skin, a lingering touch, and then, it happened again. On the floor, in the shadows, another stolen moment of raw, desperate passion. That night was a blur. A fever dream. An experience that defied all logic, all morality. The next day, my husband returned. Tired, his eyes searching mine. "Honey, you look different. What's wrong?" "I'm fine," I lied, my voice flat, my eyes avoiding his. We talked. The words hollow, meaningless. I told him about the day, omitting the single, devastating truth. Then, he mentioned the security cameras. Faulty. He wanted to know who had come to the house. The man he'd sent, he said, couldn't be trusted. My heart hammered in my chest. What would Caleb say? What would my husband do? What would I do? He fired Caleb. Of course he did. My husband, the protector, the provider, wouldn't tolerate any threat to his domain. Caleb, a casualty of my reckless desires. The guilt, it's a constant companion. It claws at me in the quiet moments, in the dead of night, when the memories of his touch, his voice, flood my senses. Caleb, the forbidden fruit, the catalyst of my undoing. But even with the guilt, there's a flicker of something else. A dark, shameful thrill that I can't quite extinguish. I remember the way he looked at me, the way he moved, the way he made me feel alive. More alive than I'd felt in years. I found his contact again. Of course I did. I'm a moth drawn to a dangerous flame. A fool. We met, in the shadows, in the anonymity of a cheap hotel room. His body, so different from my husband's, so lean, so powerful. I ran my hands over his skin, tracing the lines of his muscles, marveling at his strength. "You're so strong," I whispered, the words a confession and a plea. He smiled, a predatory gleam in his eyes. "And you, Mona," he murmured, his voice rough. "You're a fire I can't put out." I was a liar. A cheat. A woman who had betrayed the man who built my world. The man who gave me everything. The guilt was a constant ache, a sharp, twisting pain in my chest. But the pleasure, the sheer, unadulterated pleasure, was a drug. A dangerous, addictive drug. We met again. And again. Each encounter a stolen moment, a reckless gamble. My husband's suspicion grew. I could see it in his eyes, in the way he watched me, in the way he held me close, as if trying to hold on to something that was already slipping away. Then, the inevitable. The night he followed me. The hotel room. The open door. His face, a mask of shock and pain. The sound of his heart breaking. He collapsed. Not physically but emotionally. The man I loved, the man I betrayed, shattered before my eyes. He was hospitalized. The doctors spoke of stress, of a weakened heart. My fault. All my fault. I was a ghost. I haunted the hospital corridors, my guilt a heavy, suffocating weight. When he was released, I was gone. Vanished. No note. No explanation. Just an empty house, a void where I once stood. I know he's wondering. Wondering about my parents, my sister. The house he built for them, the education he provided. Were they now tainted? Were they now gifts that carried the bitter taste of betrayal? I know he's wondering about me. Where I went. What I'm doing. If I'm thinking of him. I am. Every moment of every day. I think of the house. The empty rooms. The silence that echoes where laughter used to be. I think of his face, the pain in his eyes. And I wonder, not for the first time, how I could have done this. How I could have betrayed the man who loved me. I'm a ghost, haunting the edges of my own life. A woman consumed by a desire that burned everything to ashes. And I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive myself. Or if he ever could.